5 signs. You are losing the invisible war inside your head. Carl Jung, Psychological Perspective. There is a silent, formless battlefield, located precisely behind your eyes, a place where a war is being waged every single second of your existence. Yet most people will go their entire lives without ever realizing they are the primary casualty. We often walk through our days believing that we are the masters of our own houses, the conscious captains of our souls, moving with intent and purpose toward goals we have chosen for ourselves. But what if the decisions you make, the people you love, the things that make you angry, and even the failures you keep repeating, are not actually coming from you at all? Carl Jung, the legendary Swiss psychiatrist, suggested that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This implies a terrifying reality. There is an invisible war happening within your psyche, and if you are not actively participating in it, you are almost certainly losing it. The stakes of this conflict are nothing less than your sanity, your identity, and the very meaning of your life. You might have felt the symptoms of this struggle without knowing their origin. Perhaps you have experienced that sudden, inexplicable surge of irritation when someone says something minor, or that heavy, lingering sense of emptiness that persists even when your external life seems perfect. You know the feeling of being stuck in a loop, dating the same type of person who hurts you in the same way, or sabotaging your own success just as it reaches its peak. It feels like there is a ghost in the machine, a hidden hand pulling the strings of your emotions and reactions. You ask yourself why you can't just be happy, or why you can't just change, and the silence that follows that question is the most haunting part of the human experience. It is the realization that there is a stranger living inside you, and this stranger is currently winning. The great mystery that baffles most seekers of self-improvement is why, despite all our knowledge and all our effort, we remain our own worst enemies. We read the books, we listen to the podcasts, and we set the resolutions, yet the fundamental patterns of our behavior remain stubbornly unchanged. Why does the mind seem to work against itself? Why would a part of you want you to fail or remain in pain? To understand this, we must look into the deep, dark waters of Jungian psychology, where the concept of the shadow resides. Jung proposed that we all have a hidden side, a collection of all the traits, desires, and memories we have deemed unacceptable and pushed into the depths of our unconscious. This is where the war begins. But here is the detail that almost nobody perceives. The war isn't just about hiding these things, it's about what happens when these hidden forces start to fight back. One of the most profound signs that you are losing this invisible war manifests in a phenomenon Jung called projection. Think about that one person in your life who absolutely infuriates you, someone whose every habit or opinion feels like an assault on your senses. You might think your hatred is a justified reaction to their flaws, but Jung would suggest something much more unsettling. He believed that the things we cannot stand in others are often the very parts of ourselves we have suppressed and refused to acknowledge. When you are losing the internal war, your psyche can no longer contain the pressure of these hidden traits, so it projects them onto the world around you like a movie onto a screen. You begin to see enemies everywhere, not realizing that you are looking into a mirror. This creates a state of perpetual conflict with the external world, leaving you exhausted and confused, wondering why everyone is so difficult, while the real source of the friction remains untouched within your own shadow. But there is something even deeper happening beneath the surface of these daily irritations. As the war intensifies, you may notice a creeping sense of exhaustion that has nothing to do with physical labor. This is the second sign, a profound loss of vitality or a feeling of being drained by life itself. In Jungian terms, this is the result of the massive amount of psychic energy required to keep your shadow suppressed. Imagine trying to hold a dozen beach balls underwater simultaneously. Eventually, your muscles will tire, and the balls will begin to pop up violently to the surface. When you are constantly fighting to maintain a certain image of yourself, the good person, The successful person, the stoic person, you are starving the rest of your psyche of energy. You are living as a fragment of a whole human being, and the parts of you that have been cut off are essentially acting as vampires, draining your will to live because they are not being allowed to exist. It is at this point that everything starts to make sense in a very uncomfortable way. You might find yourself falling into the third sign of losing the internal war, the phenomenon of the neurotic loop or repetition compulsion. Have you ever noticed how your life seems to follow a specific tragic script? Perhaps you always end up with partners who are emotionally unavailable, or you always find a way to get fired from a job just when a promotion is near. You might tell yourself you are just unlucky, but Jung saw this as the unconscious mind trying to force a confrontation. Because you refuse to face the internal conflict, your psyche arranges external circumstances to mirror that conflict, hoping that this time you will finally see the pattern and integrate the lesson. If you find yourself saying "not again" to the same type of disaster, it is a sign that the invisible war is being won by the forces of your unconscious, which are essentially sabotaging your conscious goals to get your attention. Yet, as we descend further into this psychological landscape, we encounter a fourth sign that is perhaps the most dangerous because it is so often praised by society: the total takeover of the persona. The persona is the mask we wear to navigate the world, the social identity we cultivate to be accepted and successful. While it is a necessary tool, losing the war means you have forgotten that you are wearing a mask at all. You have become the role you play. When the mask and the face become one, you lose touch with your authentic self. You might be achieving great things. You might be well liked and respected, but inside, there is a hollow, cold sensation of fraudulence. You feel like an actor who has forgotten the play ended hours ago. This disconnect creates a profound internal tension because the soul cannot breathe through a plastic mask. The more you succeed in the eyes of others, while ignoring your internal truth, the more you are losing the war for your own soul. This leads us to a detail that almost nobody notices until it is too late: the emergence of autonomous complexes. These are essentially small, independent personalities within your mind that take over when you are stressed, tired, or triggered. Have you ever said something in a fit of rage and later thought, "I don't know what came over me"? That something that came over you was a complex. When you are losing the internal war, these complexes gain more power and frequency. They begin to hijack your speech and your actions, making you a passenger in your own body. You start to feel like you are not one person, but a collection of conflicting voices, none of which are truly you. This fragmentation is the ultimate victory for the chaos of the unconscious. But here is where the most important revelation occurs: the detail that changes the entire nature of the conflict. Most people think that to win the war inside their head, they must defeat the shadow, conquer their flaws, and emerge as a perfect, purified version of themselves. But Jung taught that the goal is not perfection, it is wholeness. The reason you are losing the war is not that you have bad parts, but that you are treating parts of yourself as enemies. The invisible war is not a war of extermination, it is a war of integration. The shadow is not a monster to be slain, it is a reservoir of untapped energy and wisdom that has been twisted by your rejection of it. The anger you suppress contains the seeds of your courage. The sadness you hide contains the depth of your empathy. The chaos you fear is the source of your creativity. The real discovery, the one that can halt the loss and turn the tide of the battle, is the realization that the enemy inside you is actually a messenger. When you experience projection, exhaustion, or repetition, your psyche is not trying to destroy you. It is trying to wake you up. It is signaling that you have become lopsided, that you have moved too far away from your center. Jung called this process of moving toward wholeness individuation. It is the act of gathering all the scattered, warring pieces of your identity and bringing them into a single, cohesive whole. It requires the immense courage to look into the mirror and say, "Yes, I am also that which I hate. I am also that which I fear. As you begin to stop fighting against yourself and start listening to the symptoms of your defeat, the nature of the war changes. The energy that was once used for suppression is now available for creation. The exhaustion lifts because you are no longer holding the beach balls underwater. The projections dissolve because you recognize the flaws in others as reflections of your own humanity. The repetition loops break because you have finally learned the lesson the unconscious was trying to teach you. You move from being a victim of fate to being an active participant in your own evolution. This brings us to a point of deep reflection. If you look closely at your life right now, can you see the places where the white flag has already been raised? Can you identify the masks that have grown too tight, or the patterns that have become your prison? We live in a world that encourages us to look outward for our problems and our solutions, blaming the economy, our upbringing, or our enemies for our discontent. But the most significant events of your life are not happening out there. They are happening in the silent spaces between your thoughts. The invisible war is the only war that truly matters, because the person you become in that struggle is the person who will walk through the world and face its challenges. To lose this war is to become a ghost in your own life, a collection of reactions and habits with no central core. But to win it, or rather, to transcend the need for war through integration, is to become truly human. It is to possess a depth and a resilience that cannot be shaken by external storms. It is to find the self, that central point of the psyche that Jung believed was the goal of all human development. This is not a journey for the faint of heart. It requires a brutal honesty that most will find unbearable. It requires you to descend into the basement of your own mind and shake hands with the things you have spent a lifetime running from. But what lies on the other side of that confrontation is the only true peace possible for a human being. It is the peace of a person who no longer has any secrets from themselves. It is the clarity of someone who understands that their darkness is just as much a part of them as their light, and that both are necessary for the flame of consciousness to burn. As you move forward from this moment, ask yourself, who is actually making your next decision? Is it the mask? Is it the shadow? Or is it the emerging whole that is finally ready to take the lead? The signs of your loss are not a death sentence. They are an invitation. They are the cracks in the armor that allow the light of awareness to enter. If you are feeling the weight of the war, if you are seeing the signs of your own internal defeat, do not look away. The pain you feel is the friction of your soul trying to realign itself. The conflict is the proof that you are still alive, that there is still something within you worth fighting for. The invisible war will continue, whether you acknowledge it or not, but the moment you turn your gaze inward and begin the work of integration, the battle ends and the building of a soul begins. Ultimately, Jung's perspective teaches us that we are not the protagonists of a simple story of good versus evil, but the architects of a complex cathedral of the mind. Every brick, even the ones hidden in the dark foundations, is necessary for the structure to stand. When you stop trying to win the war by destroying your shadow, and instead win by incorporating it, you reach a level of consciousness that is rare in this world. You become a person who is not easily manipulated, not easily broken, and no longer a stranger to themselves. The war inside your head is the greatest challenge you will ever face, but it is also the greatest opportunity. It is the path to becoming who you were always meant to be before the world told you who you should be. Reflect on the signs, listen to the silence, and remember that the most important victory is the one where there is no enemy left to fight, only a self that has finally come home.